Thanksgiving had always been my least favorite holiday, though I never said it out loud. I still showed up early every year, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, pretending the knot in my stomach was just hunger. The house looked the same as it always did, polished hardwood floors, framed family photos that somehow never included my milestones, the faint smell of lemon cleaner layered over roasted turkey and sage. I was 22, old enough to recognize patterns, old enough to know where I stood in this family. Still, a small, stubborn part of me hoped that this year might be different. Mom handed me a stack of plates without looking up. "Can you set the table?" she asked, already turning back to the stove. Of course I could. I always could. Dad sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, glasses perched on his nose. He gave me a distracted smile, the kind that said affection without attention. My sister, Emily, arrived last, as usual, sweeping in with cold air clinging to her coat and confidence clinging to her voice. "Sorry I'm late," she said, not sounding sorry at all. She kissed Mom's cheek, hugged Dad, and brushed past me with a quick nod, like I was a piece of furniture she vaguely remembered owning. Dinner was loud and warm in the way only appearances could be. Laughter bounced off the walls. Glasses clinked. Someone complimented the turkey. Someone else praised Emily's new job, her new car, her new plans. No one asked how I was doing. No one ever did. We sat down to eat, hands linked as Dad said grace. His voice was steady, calm. I watched his fingers, thick, familiar, wrapped around Mom's hand. They looked like people with nothing to hide. Halfway through the meal, Emily pushed her chair back and stood. She lifted her glass, her smile bright and practiced. "I have an announcement," she said. The room hushed immediately. Mom's face lit up. Dad straightened. I felt my shoulders tense, instinctively bracing. "Well," Emily continued, glancing around the table, "Mom and Dad have decided to officially sign the house over to me." There it was. The sentence landed heavy, like it had weight. Applause broke out. Laughter. Someone cheered. An aunt called out, "That's wonderful." Dad smiled proudly. Mom dabbed at her eyes. Emily turned toward me then, tilting her head just slightly, like she was savoring something. "Oh, and just so there's no confusion," she added lightly, "you're not getting anything. The house is mine." More laughter. A few nods of agreement. Someone murmured, "That makes sense." I felt the air leave my lungs, not all at once, but slowly, painfully, as if the room itself had decided I no longer needed it. My ears rang. My hands were cold. But I smiled. I set my fork down carefully, the clink deliberate, controlled. I looked across the table at my father, really looked at him. His smile had frozen, just slightly. "Dad," I said softly, my voice calm enough to fool even myself. "Should I tell them, or will you?" The fork slipped from his hand and hit the plate with a sharp, unmistakable sound. Emily's face twisted. "Tell us what," she demanded. And just like that, the house felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The silence that followed my question was thick and uncomfortable, like the moment before a storm finally breaks. No one spoke. Forks hovered midair. My sister stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking another language. Dad cleared his throat, but no words came out. His eyes dropped to his plate, and in that small movement, something shifted inside me. I had seen that look before, avoidance wrapped in guilt. I'd grown up with it. "You're being dramatic," Emily said with a brittle laugh. "What secret could you possibly know?" I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I looked around the table. At my relatives. At the people who had just cheered while I was erased. Their smiles were fading now, curiosity replacing amusement. "You all remember Grandma Ruth," I said quietly. Of course they did. She had lived in this house longer than anyone. Built half of it with Grandpa. Paid off the mortgage decades ago. This place wasn't just property to her, it was history. "She trusted me," I continued. I was the one who took her to her appointments. The one who sat with her at night when she couldn't sleep. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. She already knew where this was going. Before she passed, I said, Grandma gave me a folder. Told me to keep it safe. Said one day I'd understand why. I paused, letting that sink in. Inside that folder were documents I hadn't wanted to believe at first, loan agreements, bank notices, signatures I recognized immediately. My parents' names. This house's address. Numbers that made my stomach twist. Years ago, after Emily's second business failed, after her credit cards maxed out, after the bailouts no one talked about, my parents had taken out a second mortgage. Then a third. Quietly. Desperately. They never told the family. They never told Emily. They told Grandma. She was furious. But she was also practical. She made them sign an agreement, I said, my voice steady even as my hands trembled beneath the table. If the house was ever transferred, the debt would go with it. Fully. Emily's smile cracked. That's not true. It is, Dad whispered, finally speaking. The word landed like a confession. I stood and walked to the hallway closet, my footsteps echoing in a way they never had before. I had placed the folder there when I arrived, habit, maybe. Or instinct. When I returned and set it on the table, the sound of paper sliding against wood seemed unnaturally loud. The house isn't free, I said. It hasn't been for a long time. I opened the folder and turned it toward Emily. Second mortgage. Equity loan. Deferred payments. Interest stacked on interest. Her hands began to shake as she scanned the pages. The payments start next month, I added softly. And they're not small. Mom finally spoke. We meant to handle it, she said weakly. We thought. You thought I'd never find out, I said. Grandma had left me something too. Not the house. She'd known better. She'd left me savings, enough to start over, enough to be safe. Her quiet apology for the years I'd been overlooked. This house, I said, closing the folder, was never a gift. It was a burden. Emily looked up at me, eyes wild, realization crashing in all at once. And the walls, those familiar, beloved walls, seemed to listen, holding the weight of every lie ever spoken inside them. Emily pushed her chair back so hard it scraped against the floor, the sound sharp and angry, slicing through the stunned quiet. You're lying, she said, pointing at me with a trembling finger. This is some sick joke because you're jealous. No one laughed this time. I stayed where I was, standing at the end of the table, hands resting lightly on the back of my chair. My heart was pounding, but my voice didn't waver. I had lived too long swallowing truths to let fear choke me now. If I were lying, I said, Dad would be denying it. All eyes turned to him. He didn't look up. The silence stretched, each second heavy enough to hurt. Dad's shoulders slumped, as if the years he'd spent hiding finally caught up to him all at once. She deserves to know, I said quietly. Don't you think? Mom reached for his arm. Please, she whispered, not to me, but to him. That was when I understood something painful and freeing at the same time. They weren't afraid of the truth. They were afraid of losing her love. Dad swallowed hard. We thought it would work out, he said finally. We thought the house would gain value. We thought. You thought, I interrupted gently, that I'd stay quiet. Like I always do. Emily laughed again, but it sounded fractured, almost hysterical. So what? Even if there's debt, it's still my house. I can sell it. I nodded. You can. After you pay off what's owed. Her face drained of color. How much? I slid one page toward her. Just one. The total sat at the bottom, bold and unforgiving. Emily's breath hitched. This isn't possible. It is, I said. And it's legally tied to the deed. Whoever owns the house owns the debt. A cousin cleared his throat. An ant shifted uncomfortably. The table that had been full of cheers minutes ago now felt like a courtroom. Emily turned to my parents. "You let me announce this? You let everyone celebrate?" Mom burst into tears. "We didn't think she'd say anything." Emily's head snapped back toward me. "You planned this." I shook my head. "No. I planned to survive." I leaned forward slightly, meeting her eyes. "You wanted me humiliated. You wanted me to hear that I get nothing. So I asked a question." I looked at Dad again. "Should I tell them?" I repeated softly, "or will you?" His fork lay abandoned on the plate, forgotten. His hands were shaking now, too. "There's more," he said, voice barely audible. Emily froze. "The house was collateral," he continued. "But your grandmother, she protected her estate. She left your sister money. Not the house." Emily's scream tore through the room, raw and unrestrained. "You stole from me." "No," I said firmly. "Grandma gave me what she wanted me to have." The table felt shattered, not physically, but emotionally, like something sacred had been broken beyond repair. The truth was out, and it wasn't loud or cruel. It was simply undeniable. And in that moment, as Emily collapsed back into her chair, I realized the question hadn't destroyed the family. It had only revealed what was already broken. The house didn't fall apart all at once. It unraveled slowly, the way lies always do, quietly at first, then all at once when there was no thread left to hold them together. Thanksgiving ended without dessert. People left in murmurs and sideways glances, carrying leftovers and secrets they hadn't expected to witness. The front door closed behind the last guest with a final, hollow sound that echoed through the hallway. Emily didn't speak to me that night. She locked herself in her old bedroom, the one with the freshly painted walls and the furniture Mom and Dad had bought her just last year. I heard her crying through the vents, the sound sharp with anger, not grief. The next morning, she was gone. Within weeks, the truth caught up to everyone. The bank letters started arriving, thick envelopes stamped in red. Emily tried to sell the house, but buyers walked away as soon as the debt surfaced. No one wanted a gift that came with a lifetime of payments. Mom and Dad aged years in a matter of months. They called me often at first, apologies wrapped in excuses, regret softened by desperation. I listened once. Then I stopped answering. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-respect. Emily tried to blame me publicly. Told relatives I had sabotaged her future, that I'd manipulated Grandma. But paperwork doesn't lie, and neither does silence when it finally finds its voice. The house was repossessed by spring. The day the bank changed the locks, I drove by without stopping. I didn't need to see it empty to know what it represented. That house had never been love. It had been leverage. A reward dangled to control loyalty. Grandma had understood that. With the money she left me, I did something no one expected. I bought a small place of my own. Nothing fancy. Just clean windows, quiet mornings, and walls that held no secrets. The first night I slept there, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. On Thanksgiving the following year, I cooked for myself and a few friends who had become family. We laughed too loudly. We passed dishes without keeping score. No one announced inheritances. Late that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "You took everything from me." I stared at the words for a long moment before typing back. "No," I wrote. "I took nothing. I just didn't carry what was never mine." I blocked her after that. The house was gone. The illusion with it. But what I gained was worth far more than square footage or tradition. I gained the truth. I gained peace. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one at the table anymore. I was free. And that, I finally understood, was what the house had really been worth.